So now we watched it twice, and I want you to now pull out the ethos, logos, and pathos. So let's go ahead and talk about ethos first. What did you see or hear that made his story credible, honest, believable from both words and body language, different things like that? So let's go to Dejanay first.
Um, well, his body language for starters. Somebody that wouldn't like. I don't know how to word. I don't know how to word it, but if that wasn't his story or something that was true that happened to him, he wouldn't have been as calm about it. And him being calm means that he's like mentally okay with being able to tell that story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this particular story is I've seen him now give the speech in a different way. Maybe 3 times. He gave it once at, I didn't see one of them, but I know because he's like my friend. I've talked to him for 2 years, and he gave it once at his graduation speech. He was kind of like the valedictorian for graduate school. He just did. And then he gave it at a professional development for teachers to encourage, obviously, future teachers to continue following your why, things like that. And he worded that even differently. And then I had seen it before and knew him because we were friends. And I was like, hey, I think if you're willing, that this could be really great for what I'm doing in my class, because I want people to learn this ethos, logos, pathos, but also he needs to be a motivational speaker and his work needs to be published, because honestly, like, this is deep. And so I asked him, I was like, I could cash app you or whatever, but can we make this happen? So then, like, you saw the photos at the end and stuff. We took like pictures of him like around like murals and stuff around the city with like Black activists. Like that was John Lewis and Diane Nash in the last one. And then we found like a new Chadwick Boseman one. We found like a Mamba one, right, for Kobe and different things. So it's just powerful that he knows, right, that it's a powerful story, but also like it needs to be put out there and published and things like that. So I like Dejanay, what she said in terms of his body language and stuff, because I actually strategically thought of that. Obviously, when you give a speech in person, right, like you're in front of a crowd, you usually have a podium or something, but we're all at home in Zoom world, right? So I was like, how can we make this work where you don't have to memorize this whole like 2-page speech when we don't have a printer and all this stuff? So he's not looking at the camera. I made it. I was like, you don't know this word for word, even though it's your story, but how can we make this work and it work for like videography? So in terms of like uh when you're contemplating something and something is very serious, sometimes you don't look people in the eye anyway, right? And sometimes people would say that would take away your credibility, because if you don't make eye contact psychologically, or if you can't turn towards somebody with your body language, people will think you're not trustworthy. But if you're thinking deeply about something, and this seemed very intimate, right, it's like, I don't really want to look you in the eye, because I'm really thinking about how this is going to impact me, how it's impacted my healing journey, how it could impact future generations. So I was like, you don't need to look at the camera. And then, because we're teachers and I'm a nerd, we can go ahead and put these on these giant sticky notes on the wall, and you can read the whole speech and not act like you're looking on purpose. So then he looked at the camera one time. It was perfect. When he was like, actually, if you didn't know, I am what did he say?
He said his name, or the name of
Ezel?
the little boy in the beginning.
Right. And yeah, Ezel, right? And so it's like everything comes full circle, right? So now, like, you can see like the work and everything is so much deeper, from like when you have to do a project and something you're passionate about, but also just talking about something and dealing with something through mental illness, through coping strategies, through healing, all that, and still caring enough to want to help other people, right? um Even like me, like I'm his friend, but helping like for my class. So, and he does it every day with students and friends and coworkers and family. So now, with all that in mind about credibility with ethos, what else in the story itself that you heard is credible from the words, either him or people who abused, or that were kind to him? So anyone can have the floor on this.
I had thought about when he said that he had still graduated from school.
Mm-hmm.
That could be some credibility because that takes a lot to go through what he went through and
Right.
still like through school.
Still persisting through it all. And also, when we talk about goodness, logos, you could also say that's literally how you could he, you know, if he was like some of these other people we've read that didn't give their first name or whatever, you could literally like look up their degree because like it's logic, it's fact. Okay, somebody else. What is something else that made you think he was credible, his story is honest, someone else in the story was, you know, their credibility is lacking or whatever? Let's go to Ruby.
I was just gonna talk about how he had talked about all the struggle that he had went through with neglect, domestic violence, and sexual abuse and stuff like that. And as he said that his students found hope in his presence because of all the stuff that he went through, it's like you go through all that stuff, you're expected to not follow your dreams, you're expected to not continue on your path, you're not even expected to make it through school as he did. So I feel like that, for me personally, I was like, wow, so you went through all that, but you're still on this end taking this video, discussing your story, and other people are still finding hope in your story.
Right. And another piece of that that you brought up, and he doesn't say it in the video, but he says it in person. And obviously, like I taught right across the hall from him and stuff. Um, is what you were just talking about, being seen by the communities that he's serving. He is a Black man, he is representation for those students, right? And so he is so pivotal because I mean stereotypically like most of the time there's women teachers, right? And then so that's already one piece, plus he's a STEM teacher, he did science, math, that's a whole nother elevation. Then he can talk about, you know, medical school, all the obstacles faced, and then furthermore, just continue building them up in various ways. But the pivotal piece is he's a Black male role model that has gone through all this and still is pushing through, right? And just persisting through it all. So anyone else about Ethos? And then we're going to move on to the next section. What about y'all didn't say it, but I always want to make y'all think of the opposite. So he obviously is credible. His story is real. He's honest. You believe him from his body language, whether he's looking at the camera or not. How he's sitting is like formal, it's serious, it's you take it genuine, right? But think about the other characters, maybe not named but mentioned, or something not mentioned, right? Just as much as something is important that is blatantly said is always that piece of what is not said. And how does that help with Ethos credibility? So think about other people, other characters, other entities that were mentioned in his speech, and how they are credible or not. Let's go to Bradley.
I don't know, maybe the teachers,
Okay.
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You know, him going to school and I guess encourage him that, you know, going to college can better
Right.
your life, I guess.
Exactly. You know how in this class I always talk about everyone's story matters. And we've talked about this specifically in this class because of what Jakira mentioned about representation in television, movies and stuff being still lacking or only covering maids and slavery and all that nonsense, right? Not just everyday life of just regular people. And Viola Davis mentioned in her speech about exhuming bodies from the graves. Like some people's stories are never told, right? Because they had hard lives and nobody thought they were like important or famous. But talking about their stories, of their love stories, of their successes, of their failures, so we can learn from them. He's like an exact example of this, right? It's just a regular person from Arkansas, moved to Tennessee. Like he's not from Hollywood, he's not like famous, but his story is important. But what Bradley just said about his teachers is even further more important. Every single time you're around someone, you should learn from them. I don't care if it's like the most basic thing ever. The other day, Saturday, when we were doing this project together, we were driving around just talking. I always listen to people and look at stuff and try to take something and like learn. I value time so much and value other people. So he was talking about, he had this Instagram picture and I just asked him about it. He had like a professional portrait drawn of him and he posted it, but didn't tell a lot about it. So I was like, oh, I've always wanted to ask what that was. And he said one of his mentors was going to put him in his book. He's a doctor that like literally was one of his mentors when he was going to do cancer research that found this like cell, literally. And so he paid someone like, I think he said like $800 or $900 to get this picture of Xavier done, because he wants to talk about his impact in his life, right? And that's his teacher. So just as much as he's been impacted by his teachers, he's also impacting other people with his story. And all, the back and forth, always, we can always learn from those intersectional stories. And even more so, like, I would never have known that guy existed that found this right cell or whatever, DNA strand. I can't remember the exact scientific word he used, but the story is more important, right? That he was influenced by this mentor, but just as much, he influenced the mentor who wants to include him in his memoir and wanted an actual hand-drawn. Think of how much someone must mean to you that you would go pay $800 or $900 to get a portrait drawn of them, right? Not just, I'm gonna take a selfie of you or with you. Like, think of the impact that that person must have in your life, that you would spend that money, spend that time. Okay, so somebody else, in terms of other people mentioned in the story, or how you could go deeper thinking about credibility, honesty. Okay, so now,
Teacher though.
sorry, go ahead.
Teacher though, so he got some credibility with it.
So who did you say had credibility? Sorry, I couldn't hear. Okay, I think this sounds a little messed up. It's all right. So also think of I know we're thinking of positives and stuff right now, but also think about the abuse, right? And it's not named.
About to say.
Yeah. Who was that?
Dejanay. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm not ostracizing you or Ruby. I was just trying to encourage other people to participate, and y'all were both very vocal right now, but I still want to hear your voice. Go ahead. Tell me what you want to say.
Well, actually, I was about to talk about like the people that died and how that could have affected his journey.
Yes, definitely. Multiple people, right? Think about, remind me of that, the death and the layers of what happened with the actual journey when we go to Logos. But also thinking about the trauma, the things that were inflicted upon him. Think about the lack of credibility of those people who inflicted like literal child abuse, physical, mental, sexual, on a child and like infant, right? And adolescent, all those things. And then going through foster, adoption, all of those things, and still having a rough time. And then further, right, other people that have done things, or like you mentioned about the death. Okay, so now we're going to transition to Logos. So with logic, remember, I said you might not always have science, you might not always have math, but there's a process and there's step-by-step logical thinking he has done, and he strategically does things, right, to continue on this hard journey. So think about that with the Logos, or pull out something else that you thought was interesting you want to share. Okay, let's go to Jakira.
Oh, I was gonna say, with the way he words all of his like abuse and like what happens to him, like he says it in a very logical manner. Like Ezel went through this, Ezel went through that.
Yep, it's just very factual, right? It's not like, obviously it's emotional, obviously it's something like he had to heal from, but it was very like, this is what happened, and this is how I'm growing from it, or this is how I'm going to influence other people and see myself in them to continue with that motivational why. Somebody else. Let's go to, I'm gonna randomly start calling y'all. We gotta wake up. Okay, Jalen, what do you think for Logos?
I said for Logos, I said the part when he talked about how he got hope from the teachers to push him forward, and then I also talked about the part of him finding hope in school and making it a safe place. That was like the reason to improve.
Yes, exactly. Literally, like cause and effect. Like, I was influenced by so many teachers, educators, mentors, and so I'm going to continue paying it forward, right? So thank you for talking about that specific knowledge that he's pouring into others, and the Logos that he's actively doing daily to make sure he continues on that path. Okay, somebody else with Logos.
I don't know if this right, but somebody else had already said it, but like the way he told the story of like basically from the beginning to end, and then when he just mentioned about 2020 about just basically how this was a rough year, but like trying to make the best of it for the most part, I guess. And like I say, how he told his story like from beginning to end, he wasn't just like all over the place with it.
Exactly.
It was the way he told the story. So from him eating the food out the can or having like, you know, less meals, not many meals, and then him being homeless, living out of his car, and then his brother, sister, all them passing away. But I could be wrong. I think I misunderstood what these
No,
mean. So.
You're exactly right. I try not to give y'all answers. I want y'all to, you know, metacognitively deal with it yourself. Because I know in my brain what I want y'all to say and what I want you to get out of it. But again, the teachers are not, you can show somebody where to look, but I don't want to tell you what to see. I want you to come up with it yourself and really delve into it yourself. So you're exactly right. He logically is going through this in chronological order, exactly how I'm telling y'all in your rubrics, when you do your narratives, when you do your next essays. You don't want to jump around. If you're trying to influence someone, you're trying to persuade someone, you're trying to help them on a path. If you're talking about something that happened in 1995, then you go to 2009, then you go to here, it's just messed up and, you know, it's chaotic, right? So you need to keep them on a path logically to make it make sense and to just show like, this is my literal journey and I'm continuing on it. So thank you for sharing that, Natasha. With that in mind, let's think very quickly, but strategically again, what was the journey? So for him at the beginning, logically, we heard what facts from the very beginning of childhood. What was the first thing going on?
Sexual abuse.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Sexual,
abuse.
like emotional and literal physical, right? With starvation basically and having to just get what you can for survival. Okay. So that's childhood, very young childhood. So then what happened next that we heard about?
He was struggling to eat, you know, barely eating, couldn't get full meals and stuff.
And that continued on, right? So that was in Arkansas when he was a child. Then after all of that occurs, what happened next when he came to America?
Yeah, he tried to go to school, and then that's when he was still homeless, and then like you say, still, you know, no food and stuff, but he was still going to school, but nobody knew he was homeless, and then he was living in his car. And I think after that, that's when his brother passed away. His brother got killed, and then his sister passed away, and then the person that he looked up to the most as a role model ended up passing away as well.
Right, his uncle. Yep. So it's like I have this logical plan, right? I've survived. I've literally survived trauma, horrific trauma. And now I'm going to be like change the generational curse. I'm going to college. I'm furthermore going to medical school, right? I'm going to study cancer research. Then I'm going to go at Vanderbilt. Then I'm going to go to Meharry and do, what did he say he was going to do for college at Meharry? Bradley, what did he say?
Study medicine.
Yeah, and what specific section of medicine?
Medicine.
What was it?
STEM.
Well, he teaches STEM now, but originally he was going to get his medical degree in dentistry. So we have the trauma in childhood, then we have the persistence throughout trying to continue your education.
You're kind of going in slow. Well, on my screen.
Okay. Is it everybody?
No, it's fine on my end.
Okay, cool. Just restart, Bradley. Okay, so then he has all of these. I mean, Nashville is outrageous, right? We know this, like for anybody, but imagine a teenager coming here, just graduate high school, trying to go to college, like living in your car because you're like, you already survived starvation and abuse and everything, and now you're still persistent and hiding it. Think of that essay we read about the homeless college student. Literally, it's like so similar, and he's hiding it too. People didn't know he was living like he was. And you saw that picture of him in front of the Vanderbilt sign, right? He had like the white coat on. He looked like polished, everything. So imagine like the strategy even there with logos of how you have to like have this persona and try to like fit in and still be dealing with everything you're dealing with. That's logic and like fortitude, right? So then all of that is dealt with. And then when he's already struggling with school, struggling homelessness, he has all the deaths, right? That furthermore just mess everything up. So the sister, the brother's brother, the uncle, and that just kind of, he said it was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? So then he says, if I can't do this path that I've logically planned out, then what Miss Genevieve said is true. He's gonna become a STEM teacher and still utilize his skills, right? Use his knowledge to then influence other people and have his why. And even that, think about that. He has that logic about like, I'm using my biggest like flaw, weakness in my life that happened, tragedy, and I'm going to use that to propel other people and myself to finish what I started in this logical path that was like, turmoil, tried to mess everything up. So then what happened when he's teaching? What is going on? Is it perfect? Is every day like amazing butterflies, the kids are coloring and they're
Yes.
excellent?
No,
No.
he still was saying it was a struggle,
Yes.
but he still kept pushing forward because he had a goal that he wanted to accomplish.
Yep. And I can 100% testify to what he's talking about because we worked together last year on the same team, same grade. And those kids in that grade we worked on, that 7th grade class, those babies are special for multiple reasons because they turn up. This is the calmest person ever. I'm not playing. Like, you saw how calm his demeanor is. That's all the time. And I would hear him last year, like, going off. And I was like, if y'all can make him mad, I don't even feel bad right now about my lack of patience. Because he's like the calmest person. And you already know my personality is like,
Bebe's
so,
kids.
yeah, do what?
Bebe's kids.
I'm not saying that. I did not say that. I know what show you're talking about, though. Okay, so they were wilding out at Kip, and we're not even trying to censor that. So, but he persisted because he said, even on the days that it seemed too much, right? I'm trying to make an impact. I'm trying to be there for the Black community. I'm trying to like influence, show them they can do whatever. If they can struggle, if I struggle through that, they can through his testimony. But then what did he say was his next logical logos why to continue keeping him forward even with these crazy stressful days?
Because the students.
Sorry?
The students.
Well, no, remember he said some days I want to quit. Like, those kids are a mess. What did he say was still keeping him pushing forward?
Ezel.
Do what?
Is it Ezel?
Yes, himself. He's like, Ezel is my why forever and ever. I will do this because he can then see himself in all of those students. And I'm saying they're a mess. We love those kids. They do the most, but all of them are not wild. They just have their days. And also they have their traumas. That's exactly what he's saying. Like, I can see all of those, like, sometimes 32, 35 kids, you can see yourself in them some days. And you're like, oh, this is payback for how I acted to my mom or grandma or whatever. But it's every day is not perfect, right? Just the same thing with parents. So now through all the logos, now the easiest one I left for last, right? Because obviously you can pull out the pathos, right? What is the pathos? And that's probably where everyone's really comfortable sharing quickly. Okay, let's go to Jakira, then we're going to go to Hadaya, then we're going to ask maybe Kyrell. I know he wants to talk, but the background, it might have improved a little bit. Okay, go ahead. Whoever wants to unmute first.
I was gonna say, like the fact that he's just like a Black man, like sharing his story and like his trauma about like a sexual and physical abuse is like in and of itself is pathos, because like there are so many like male like sexual abuse victims and Black men who like need that motivation and that role model to look up to. And the fact that he's like here telling a story and like goes into STEM and all that, like,
yes,
it really like gives the unheard a voice and somebody to look up to and like to find the courage to tell their own story.
Exactly. And think about like what you just said about like the Black community and males and how this happens, all the time. But think about also the stigma with that about how Black males are supposed to be the strong figure and do all this, but like if something traumatic or something really bad happens to you, then if you told that in front of like your bros or somebody, like sometimes people might completely judge you or like stigmatize you as weak, and like how could you stigmatize a like child, right? But he's telling that vulnerable, very vulnerable story to everyone to try to help them through his struggle. Thank you, Jakira. Okay, so now who else was do you want to try Kyrell?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that like it appeared to me like as a pathos because like me being a Black man, I was able to relate to like, you know, the struggles of a Black man being able to express his feelings and truly communicate to his peers. So that's why it was like pathos easily to pull out because it appealed to me as a Black man.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. And he will be because I'm recording y'all. I didn't tell y'all till now, but I'm going to show him what y'all said. I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding, but okay. So Genevieve's laughing at me. I'm always, you know, it's okay. All right, Genevieve, do you want to share anything about Pathos?
Well, we have spoken about it before. It's easy to pick up the debts and all that and how it affected him, the abuse that he has gone through as young coming up, right? So I guess we basically touched on it mostly, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's go to Ruby, and then I'm going to come to Alex and maybe like Shane or somebody we don't always hear from. Okay.
One quote that stuck out to me that has to do with pathos. I think that's like a quote that I probably won't forget because I'm like really big on quotes. But this quote that he said, he was like, "Your potential healing is a why many people need." And it made me like think as soon as he said it, I immediately knew what it meant. And a lot of times it's like when you hear a quote, it takes you a minute to process what's behind that quote, who said the quote, why they said the quote. But with that quote, it immediately made me think, wow, so you could be going through something, but a lot of times people need to know that you're going through that because people could be going through the same thing. People could be going through something worse. And if you can get through something like this and someone else is going through something harder than that, it makes them realize, okay, maybe life's not that hard. I just need to keep my grind up, keep going, and then the end result will be all worth it. So I feel like that quote right there, it hit me hard.
Exactly. I'm excited to hear that. We always did these circles, and if you're familiar with education, that's just a thing. They always circle up teachers and make them say or talk awkwardly early in the morning or whatever about like why you're gonna do what you're doing to keep you motivated, even if you're like exhausted and stressed. And he and a couple of other people just always articulated beautifully. So when you said where did that quote came from, probably straight from his brain. It's probably not a quote he pulled from some like famous thing or whatever. He usually always just speaks eloquently, and it always can move people from all different backgrounds, right? To really have pathos and feel and empathize. And okay, so let's try Alex. What do you think on the pathos front?
I mean, I feel like Ruby really nailed it there, like in terms of his his eloquence and his ability to make you understand and relate, even if you haven't been in the same position as he has. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of people have, in some capacity, gone through something traumatic, or even if you haven't, like, you know, like depression can affect people, even if like something bad hasn't happened to you. It's just something that happens. And so um, his openness and being able to talk about that, you know, because when you look at those pictures at the end and you see like a guy in front of the Vanderbilt sign, like dressed up like a doctor, and you know, a guy like marching and all this different stuff, like you wouldn't think that that's born out of the sadness and the trauma that it is. But being able to talk about that and process through that helps, like helps me, and I know helps other people to be able to confront some of the stuff that they've gone through as well, and know that there's good on the other side of it. There's success on the other side of it. It's just part of the story at the end of the day.
Right. And like you said, even if you haven't gone through his specific challenge, right, it could even on another perspective make you think like, man, maybe something I'm like complaining about or thinking like, oh, I cannot handle this. This is so stressful. Like, really? Like, if you went through this, like what Ezel did, right? then maybe you could stop and give up. But he still didn't give up. So, okay. Does anyone else want to share without me calling on you awkwardly? Just something that we didn't touch on that really touched you or resonated with you with Pathos?
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, this doesn't really relate to what we're saying,
It's
but I was
okay.
just curious. I'm from Nashville, and I just wanted to know if he taught at the KIP that's on like Murfreesboro Road in Antioch or the other one.
So he actually works at the Antioch one right now. He switched. Everybody quit the school we were at last year. Feels like we were at the one off of well, the Douglas Avenue one's the main one in Nashville, but then we were in Whites Creek. And now he's at the middle school as a math teacher for Antioch. But there's an elementary school too now as well that they're building onto. But
Okay, thank you.
yeah. All right. Anybody else? Questions or concerns or more clarification on Ethos, Logos, Pathos? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this